Hey everybody, Edo here, and for this week's League video, I want to talk about some of the residual expectations you should have after starting to fulfill your Kickstarter. Probably by the time this video posts, I will be done, but I just went through the process of fulfilling Skull Hollow to 3,500 backers, and it reminded me about all the little nuances that I often forget about, but still need to deal with, and I wanted to share it as just the Kickstarter basics for new creators. You know, when you're a creator, you go through the process of designing the game or working on the game and then bringing it to Kickstarter, and then you have this like 30-day, 21-day insanity of the Kickstarter, and then things really calm down. You're working through the manufacturing process, prep, whatever. It's more calm. Time passes. And then suddenly, you are doing fulfillment. And I'm actually not even talking about the process of like packing the fulfillment. So you might have a partner doing that. You have to go through this process of like organizing all the names, or you're doing a pledge manager. That is all a huge and massive pain. I believe I've done videos about most of these things. But, and certainly if you are fulfilling from your home, it is a massive effort and a big bucket of work. But whatever it is, whether you're using partners or on your own, you sort of get to the end of it and then are done. And you feel like you're done. You feel like you've shipped it out. And that's true. But in reality, outside of the Kickstarter period, you are sort of heading into one of the more active periods of the campaign and one of the more just time-consuming and repetitive periods of the campaign. And I think it's just really important for you to understand and expect it so you don't get too frustrated and you handle it well. What am I talking about? Well, for one, you should expect an onslaught of questions of all sorts and sizes. Like people who just got the game have questions on how to play, what the strategies are, what works, what isn't, why did you do this? There's just all sorts of dialogue, and it'll come in all different ways. Some of it will be in the Kickstarter comments. Some of it will be direct messages on Kickstarter. Some of it will be people reaching out to you on Twitter or on Facebook, like direct message you, people you don't even know. And part of this is you've established this one-to-one creator-backer relationship, and the expectation there is that you're there to support them. And I think it's like, as it should be, but it's really like, oh, you know, 400 backers, 500 backers, the people asking questions are, let's just say 10% of the users or the backers have questions. Well, 400, that's 40 or 50 questions. If you get to 3,000, 4,000, that number starts to skyrocket. And at the end, of the day, reading an email, responding to an email, yada, 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 it all just adds up. Each interaction takes 20 minutes of your time. So maybe over a week, 40 interactions, 20 minutes each is like 10 hours-ish. Then, but 12 or whatever the math is, 13.3, I don't know. But then, oh no, 3,500, that's suddenly 20 hours a week or 30 hours. And what if you're in the Jamie Stegmaier Scythe category? You've got 1,200, 1,300 backers. Not 1,300, 13,000. And it's a lot of work. You'll also get conversations on Board Game Geek, on Reddit, and just the amount of influx of stuff happening. Your dopamine's going to be going off, but it'll be similar to like when you launched your campaign. Though the difference, in a way, is during the campaign you're talking to backers who are interested, curious, supporting you. At this stage, you're talking to consumers. You're talking to people who bought something and they got it and they have a question or a frustration or whatever. Like, it's just different. Their expectations during that campaign are one thing, but once they have the product in hand, it's as if they bought it, which they did. So questions you're going to get a lot of, especially on the rules. Guess what? You can't put a FAQ up on your Kickstarter once it closes. I don't know, might be useful, but they don't let you do that. It's one of the things that gets locked down. So you'll be reiterating things. You'll do updates to encapsulate it, and updates are good. The other things are good Make a rulebook errata on Board Game Geek or frequently asked questions on the site. That'll be helpful. One of the nuances there on the errata, like, look, I've done a lot of these, and I'm not a giant company. I don't have legions of folks who are editors and reviewers and Kickstarter or test groups. I do have some, right? But it's not a situation where there's 300 people reviewing every file. It's like an individual. And I think that's a lot of people. And there's always something. You always miss the smallest detail. Maybe it's a typo. Maybe it's a rule issue. Maybe something's going to come up, and you're going to have to address it. Sometimes it requires remediation. Sometimes it requires other details. You're going to have to deal with that. That's category A. Category B is just all of the shipping inquiries. Hey, I didn't get my tracking notification. I did get my tracking notification, but it doesn't work. It works, but I'm not, I moved, and I didn't tell you I moved. What are we going to do about that? I didn't move, but I live in Europe, and I'm on vacation for 3 months, and I want you to do something about that for me. Can you hold it? This tracking information, the address I gave you was wrong. It came, but it was damaged, or piece was missing. It's endless. And right when a piece is missing or something's damaged, you need to address it. You need to make these consumers happy. Don't make the mistake I did on Skull Hollow, which I've never done before, won't do again. And overall, for what it's worth, Skull Hollow has gone over extremely well. I had a micro rule issue which impacted 15 people, where they got like really weird rules, and I had to go research how it happened, and it was the subset of like one guy on one shift that didn't know what he was doing at the factory. But outside of that, I've had almost no missing pieces, almost no damages. It's been amazing for the amount that I printed. But my mistake was I wanted backers to get their copies. And basically the fulfillment point was before me. And rather than saying, no, ship me my copies and ship me the extra components first, why don't you just start fulfilling backers? And so what ended up happening is I didn't get the extra components for an extra 10 days from when backers started getting the game. And it's not that big a deal, but a backer was like, hey, my Raptor is broken, or, I have this rulebook issue. And I had to be like, hey, understood. I'm going to take care of it, but I'm sorry. It turns out I have to wait until I can get the components to get to you. And just as far as customer service, I wanted to be able to, like, normally it's like, oh, issue, solved, which it takes time, right? But you want to be able to do that, and not having your extra components is a part of that. Other little thing, most common and most utterly expensive issue is damaged boxes. Hey, shipping went wrong, the post office guy put a pole through it, like all sorts of things. Outer boxes damaged, components are fine. Guess what? You don't get boxes with your extra components. Partly because I think they feel like if they gave you boxes, you could rebuild games and sell games on whatever these freebie things are, but also because boxes are big, and so a bunch of extra boxes means they got to ship big packages. But dealing with a broken box is such a pain. Like, are you gonna take a box you have of a full game, open it up, and then start that works for one, but then you got extra components, you got extra boxes, but you already got extra components. At the end of the day, most of the time, the easiest thing to do is just say, here's another copy of the game. What I've tried to start doing is, because some people are like, well, I'll ship you your copy. Now you're shipping copies back and forth. So what I've tried to do is say things like, can we get your copy to a reviewer who's okay if their box cover is damaged? Because that's valuable, right? Or, hey, do you have a local game store? Can you donate it to their play section? Or, does your kid's school or a local cafe have a library? Can we find someplace good for that box and game that's perfect except for this crease on the side of the corner? Which, admittedly, you as a backer can be frustrated about, right? Like saying, you know what, I want a perfect box on this. I get it. It just means I've got this corner dent and I got to figure it out, right? And so I've moved in that area. So you got to deal with the questions. You got to do it. And I guess the point of this is just every one of these interactions, inbound email back, asking for pictures, pictures back, asking for address. They all just add up. They're time consuming. And you need to be ready to say, oh, I'm going to have 2 hours of email every night for 3 weeks. Just sorting it out, dealing with it, making people feel good. Because that's part of what you want to do. You're building your brand, you're building your company, you're shipping a product. It's a big deal. So you have the damages, then just tracking over time, like, oh, like packages don't get to their location all the time. Or there's customs, or extra customs, or it's Brazil, or it's Russia, or it's these countries that tend to have challenges due to Thailand. Whether it's customs or postal systems, or even Australia, there's like parts of Australia that like are everyday life. I mean, I'm like, they're just like, you can ship there and like they get it. And then there's like parts of Australia which clearly are, and this isn't true this is true everywhere. In the United States too, but they're like the boonies, right? Like, they're like, oh, yeah, we can get the package. It's just that we ship it to, like, City 1, and then it's on a truck to City 2, and then it's on a horse to City 3. And there's rural parts of the United States, there's rural parts of Europe, and Ireland, just places where, like, it either takes forever or high probability of damage, and people get concerned. They hear other people get games. Like, even if you're like, hey, don't be worried until 6 weeks from now that you didn't get your game. As soon as some people say, I got my game in Ireland, I got my game in Europe, I got my game in Minnesota or New York, everyone in New York's like, I'm in New York, I didn't get my game. Why isn't my game here? What's going on? And they'll message you, right? And so I'm like, just to be explicit, I'm not complaining. I'm just trying to communicate, emote the reality that this happens and help you know to expect it. So then you do need to think about your ramp to retail and how you're going to do it, and also your timing. When is fulfillment done? When can you get to retail? How does distribution work? And that all takes time. You also need to see, like, some people hit conventions and release issues, and like, you gotta be careful if you're selling or giving your game out before backers do. Some people choose to do that. It's a challenge. You're never, like, the reality is, it's hard to wait for all backers. You know, I sort of operate like, where if I know the lion's share of backers, you know, because like, I'll set a game and there'll be somebody in Spain or Mexico or Israel or I could name, like, Pencil First Games Kickstarters literally shipped to 90 countries or 78 countries or whatever the number is. It's like crazy not countries. I couldn't believe it. In Spider-Man, the new movie, Far From Home, there's a scene where he ends up in some I can't remember it, but it's this European country. It's got a really funny sounding, not funny, but like, you know, lots of a name that everyone in the United States is like, that's a weird name for a city. And I'm in there in the movie, and it comes up on screen, and I'm like, oh, I just shipped a copy of Skull Hollow to that town. Like, it was like, I know that name because I shipped there. So you ship all over the world, all sorts of places, and each and every one has their nuances, and people get back to you. So getting that timing right and how to be like, oh, look, you're this one backer didn't get their copies for some time. I just got in touch from a Russian guy, who, this was like 2 weeks ago, and he's like, I never got my game. And I was like, oh, Skull Hollow, not yet. He's like, no, Legendary Creatures. I was like, Legendary Creatures? That was a year ago. He's like, yeah, I never got it. And it's like, it was shipped there. There was tracking, like, what? And to some degree, you sort of have to deal with those issues and come to an agreement, understanding. Ultimately, in this case, I was like, all right, man, you tell me how you need this thing shipped to you, because I'm going to do it one time. You agree? We're going to use this service, this way, this tracking. We're cool? Because I'm not doing this again. I'll ship this. And I only have like 1 copy or 2 copies left of Legendary Creatures in my European shipment facility. Like that, we're just like layovers for like extra copies. So all sorts of things happen. The main point is, just know when you're planning and thinking about it, that the fulfillment period, not the period to like kick off fulfillment, but once you're in that, what basically turns out to be the 2 to 8 week period of everyone getting your stuff, you should expect probably the second highest volume of communications outside of when you're kicking the first week of your campaign. It's really that significant. And so I just want people to think about that, understand it, appreciate it, make good games, run awesome Kickstarters, all that good stuff.
So, footnote, even after I filmed that video, like in the days between filming that video and posting that video, it turns out that in some cases internationally, the wrong email was included there was some mess up, and the wrong email was included with the providers for tracking, but also for their system. So what ends up happening is, in some cases where backers used lockers, like a package was put into a locker, a notification was sent out saying, hey, your thing's here, come pick it up, but they never got it. So it sat, and 2 weeks later, it's then getting returned. And I find out because someone's like, I never got anything, and I looked it up, and it was like, it went to a locker, what happened? And so we're going to fix it. We get all these copies. We're going to reship it to everyone. They're going to have the right address. Just cover the cost. But just like, this type of stuff happens, and it's problematic. And, just as an aside, lots of people talk about different providers who have different issues, and you work with partners, and sometimes things happen. You got to run it down. But I have to tell you, I've worked with many partners, and just in the same theme of this video of heads up, this is a warning. From my experience, it's almost like no matter what partner you use, or even if you do it on your own, these things just inevitably happen when you're shipping a lot of stuff. And it's a pain, and I apologize to everyone impacted, and we're going to fix it, right? But again, just an example. Even when I was I think I'm done. Nope, not done yet. All right.
Hey everybody, Edo here, and thanks for watching Gaming with Edo. Reviews over here on this playlist, League and Insider videos over here on this one. Subscribe, share, all that good stuff. But most importantly, play some great games. Thanks.